Welcome to Rewrite the Mother Code, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way that you never have before, but have always needed. It's time to rewrite the mother code. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Rewrite the Mother Code. I'm your host, Dr. Gertrude Lyons, and I'm always excited to sit down with my guests. This one in particular, I'm super excited about because I've known her for quite some time, and she was one of my participants in my original doctoral work back in 2016 when I did my curriculum evaluation study and brought women together who did not have children, but I wanted to present a 12-hour seminar that my intention would be would shift some of the mistaken beliefs or just beliefs that are in our atmosphere and expand their awareness of the mothering journey. Now, all these women that I had come did not have children or had not had any children of their own or adopted or anything prior to coming. So it was called Preparing for Motherhood. Since then, it's expanded much beyond that, but all the seeds and the roots of all the work that I'm doing and really want to foster and bring out as much as possible came from that seminar. And it wasn't so much what I put together as it was their reactions to it and what particularly struck them. And then 6 months later, how was it still striking them? And I was really heartened to look back and look at some of that data recently. As you know, I'm writing my book. And so I'm, just bringing together everything from the past and onward. I was really heartened to see the impact that just that 12 hours had on these women. So I'm really hopeful and really excited because I know our next guest is someone who took the material from that and just a whole host of other things that she was doing for herself and her personal growth journey to be the woman that she is today. And when I get her on, I'll share some of her bio, which is really quite incredible. She's been a force in the corporate world for a long time and now coaching and in the motherhood space. So it's really been quite a journey for her, but I'm hoping for us to be able to kind of dig in and really have you see, what it took for her, that this wasn't something that just happened overnight. And so kind of be thinking about for yourself as you listen to this episode, where am I at in my mothering journey? And that's for everyone, because remember, we all mother. All women, all people mother. So what is it that you're in the moment conceiving, creating, maybe giving birth to or raising at this moment? And then particularly remembering that the most important person we need to mother is ourselves. And how are we doing with that? So be thinking about that as we jump in and have our time with Yann. Well, here we go. Yann is my guest today, Yann Dang. And I'm so excited to have you, Yann. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Gertrude. Nice to be here with you.
That's funny hearing you call me Dr. Gertrude, but we got that out of the way. You could call me Gertrude because Yann and I have known each other quite some time and I have had the privilege and honor of being with her in a number of growth spaces and doing our own work together, supporting her. Now I'd say we're all things are quite mutual. So I'm going to go ahead and share a little overview of Yann, and I know you all will be inspired to hear what this woman has done in the world and continues to do. So Yann Dang, executive and life coach, she helps corporate women in male-dominated spaces build lasting confidence. So Yann is an executive and life coach. She leverages over 15 years of international corporate experience, integrated with her deep knowledge of social and emotional intelligence as an International Coaching Federation, ICF, certified coach to support executives and leaders reach their potential. Yann recently served as the Vice President of Finance at LexisNexis. where she provided executive leadership to the CEO and other C-suite level executives by partnering with them to make strategic decisions and evaluate trade-offs to achieve sustainable financial results guided by values. Yann empowered leaders with critical data-driven insights to help them frame their stories and create actionable plans with metrics to measure progress and accountability along the way. Yann's coaching philosophy is that life presents us with challenges that are perfect opportunities for growth, creativity, and expansion. She works with the whole person and is a strong believer that one's thoughts and feelings are the direct result of the action, impact, and energy they put out into the world. Yann supports her clients to unlock energy, build momentum, and unleash their life force to achieve meaningful personal and professional aspirations. She is dedicated to empowering women and men to their most authentic selves while leveraging their innate potential through dynamic emergence coaching. Go, Yann. Woo! I love hearing this and just how you've even worded putting together, your incredible strategic and financial width now, and then the huge journey you went on in your own development with social emotional intelligence and mindfulness to now bring those two together and coach in that atmosphere. Yay. Way to go, you.
Thank you.
So as I said, Yann and I have known each other for quite some time. And one of the things I was very grateful for is that Yann participated in my doctoral research study. It was, as I explained earlier, this curriculum evaluation study. So participants came, and at that point, they did not have children. It was a group of 13 women from a great cross section of where they were at on their even thinking about or considering mothering. So yeah, and I was hoping that you could bring us back to that point, kind of where you were when you sat in that space in 2016, and then just go ahead and whatever comes up for you out of that, because your journey has taken on just some beautiful, painful, a whole gamut of life that you have navigated from a very deep and social emotional intelligence way. So you go ahead, you start talking.
Yeah. So, oh, wow. I was thinking 2016, what was I doing then? I think, was it the summertime? Do you remember? Was it
It was spring. It was May. Yep.
Okay. So I was working at LexisNexis and I was probably traveling still a lot to London. Most of my team were there. And I think I was probably dating at that time. I don't think I was in a relationship. And so this idea of motherhood, even though it's something that I had always thought I wanted, was kind of felt like really far away for me. I had a few very long relationships in my 20s that didn't really work out the way that I wanted them to. And so, part of my own getting coaching was trying to figure all of that out. And I appreciated the seminar, especially one of the things that I really took away from there that I think I continue to hold for myself and hold for people that I coach is that pain can be empowering and pain can be divine in ways, and that pain's okay. I don't think we had seen live videos of people having natural births. And I don't think I had ever been that upfront and close to what that was like, and I think part of me just kind of felt scared around it. I think we talked a lot about myths around birth and pregnancy and how it's an emergency and, people ladies are screaming hysterically. And so it gave me an opening of what was possible and how this, even birthing experience, and I guess even more expansive than that life experience can be empowered by pain. I think so often women are meant to feel ashamed of their pain, when they have their period and all those types of things and not talk about it. But I think, that seminar really helped me to see that there's another way.
Yeah. No, thank you. I remember you sharing that sometime later, and it really meant a lot to me because if there was one thing I would love to expand women's perception of and just kind of what we're taught around pain and, particularly in motherhood around birth pain. And I'd love for you to share kind of that journey for you and the choices that you made around that. And would that even have been possible had you not just had some awareness, right? Like, because this isn't about, and this never has been about for me, like telling women what they should do, right? Or that
Yeah.
I now have the answer of how to have a great mothering journey. It's always been about, gosh, there's just so much that we're told or that was wired in us from our upbringings about how it's supposed to look or supposed to, how we're supposed to be and how you do things, right? And I think birth was
Mhm.
one that, I mean, you had a lot, but birth was one in particular that I think without the awareness might have been very different for you. So if you would share about that, that would be great.
Yeah, I think it was probably the first time that I even really knew that people, I don't know, it seemed kind of foreign to me that they had like natural births without epidural, and what the benefits could be, and how I think there was just like also a mistaken belief that like, women can't endure that pain, or like that pain is just so powerful that you can like die from it or something. It was just very scary. And so when I, found out that I was pregnant back in 2020, sort of the early times, and then, I actually gave birth in 2021, I wanted to be more open-minded about what the possibilities were, and to research that, and also to do that with my husband. He never thought he would be a father or even married, to say the least. And so it was kind of a big journey for us to go on together and look at what the possibilities were. And just hearing, the home births that you've had and what that was like was helpful to have some, modeling of what that would, what's possible. And so I did hypnobirthing. I did that with my husband, and we watched a lot of videos, and I read a lot of books, and we hired a doula. And it was one of these, like Viktor Frankl talks about, these like peak moments in your life. And it was certainly that for me. Like I felt like, it was almost like so amazing, right? To go through that.
Keep going.
In
Like,
some
I'd love
ways,
for
it
you to
was,
like, yeah, just dig
yeah,
into what that
yeah, it
experience
was,
was.
well, for me, I actually had to get induced because I guess I'm considered like a geriatric, older
Oh my
pregnancy when
God.
you're
Yeah.
over
What were you?
35.
Oh, geez.
I was about 39 at the time.
Yeah.
So, but I did get preeclampsia at the very end of my pregnancy. So I had to get induced. And, that was kind of scary too, because I wanted to make sure that it was as natural as possible. And it was great to have the doula really empower me and let me ask questions. But basically, the journey had started to get me induced like the Saturday morning. And then I didn't actually deliver until like Monday morning at 2 a.m. So it was like the Sunday night. And I had a whole plan, it's like, oh, I had like, I wanted to do a water birth. It was in a hospital. And I think it was like probably 10 or 11 o'clock on like the Sunday. And they were like, okay, are you ready for this water bath? And I'm like, no, we're just going to keep going. Like, I was worried I was just going to get tired out, because I probably had probably 5 or 6 hours of real active labor, because it took a while for things to get moving. It was so good to have my doula. I also had spiritual music with me. I had a picture of my grandma. I had a few artifacts that, just helped me keep calm, and they did a nice job to like, it wasn't super bright lights. It was light. And, my husband and the doula was with me the whole time. It's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of, I've only ran one marathon in my life, but it's like that type of thing where you almost don't want to like, be like, oh, it's almost done. Cause like there might be a lot of miles ahead of you. And so I just took it one at a time. And I remember my doula and I was saying this to her, looking in her eyes when I would have the contractions. I said, this, like, I think it was like, this pain is divine, the kind of like welcoming the pain and like allowing the waves to come, and to, not fight against it, not resist it. And I think that really helped me, to kind of one at a time, step by step. We're not going to like rush to the end. It was quite funny though, towards the very end, I think everybody was ready, and the doula was like, can I take pictures? And I was like, no, we need to just get this going. And everybody was fussing with things. And I was like, no, we just like, people were starting to chit chat, and like, it was starting to like lighten up because they knew it was coming, but I was still like, it wasn't fully there. And so I think I just had like a moment of like, hey, everybody pay attention. Like, this is happening. Like, we need to make this happen. But I was grateful for, my yoga practices for a lot of those times, and the support in the room, and feeling really cared for. There are pictures of my husband just looking at me very, very warmly and like almost concerned, as I'm like in this state. So it was just a very like peak moment of like aliveness, that this was finally happening, and I felt very empowered by it. I was lucky, very minimal tears, really like pretty good healing afterwards. But it was a roller coaster for sure, because after the baby comes, you're like meant to feed it right away. It's like you almost, want to savor the moment. And I think I've been savoring by looking back, but in the moment, it's just super fast. As soon as the baby comes out, it's almost like on to the next thing. So I feel, joy that I do remember parts of it. And
well, yeah, and just I don't know if I've ever heard this level of detail of your birth story. And I literally was in tears. I'm choked up now because it's so beautiful. And I know we can kind of just, and I feel like you're in it as well, which helps for me to be with you in it. But for you to say this pain is divine while you were in it, I'm seriously going to cry. It's like, that is, and I'm sure we're gonna have some listeners like, what, like pain divine? Like, are you effing kidding me? Like, no, because we're so taught that like pain should be numbed, pain is bad, pain is to be avoided at all costs. But there's appropriate times and particular times where being in it and moving through it, and as you said, being as conscious about it and you wanted to be conscious to that pain. And I think that is so looked upon, obviously, as we just said, and unfortunately, very differently. So thank you for sharing that. And you also said having the presence of mind in that moment, because you're so sensitive, right? You're so aware, and everybody else, no matter what, is not having the experience you're having. They're with you and they're people that care about you, and thank goodness they were there, but they're not in it, so for you to say, hey, over here, everybody, bring it back. I know we're excited, but
yeah, it's not happening yet. Yeah, I think they were like also fussing around with like the wires or something. And I just remember at one point I just like pulled the gown off, and I was just kind of like, look, we gotta go. So I think even integrating some of my, I don't know, anger intentionally was helpful in that moment.
Yeah. Well, that was a beautiful place to take that. And I'm glad to have had some part in just opening that space, or just that possibility for you. But then it's you. And I love hearing too, then I read about it. I researched, that's the point then, is to go on your journey with it, once. And if there's a spark or there's an inkling, and that's so much what it was like for me, because when I heard my boss at the time say that he and his wife had 2 home births, I was like, what? And at first you're like, ah, but then
that's weird.
I know that's weird. Like, that happens like on purpose.
Yeah, not an accident.
And I was telling this somebody recently, like the things that stuck out weren't the like, oh, I'm going to have a divine experience. It was, one, I could control the lighting. And like you said, and that's where I like that there are birth spaces. It doesn't have to just be at home that will be amenable to that. But also the food thing, right? Like, if I went in a hospital, like they stopped feeding you in case, in some instances, right?
Oh, yeah.
You just talked about how after she gave birth, we had this great meal. Or I don't know. There was just something about the fact that I think I would have more control and agency, like you're talking about, right? Like with the people around you, and having that dictate it more than what can be very limiting hospital protocols. And, you could still create it. And I also love hearing how you, it wasn't exactly how you pictured it, right?
Yeah.
But you had the presence of mind, like, okay, now I'm getting induced. I could still say, as natural as possible. And like, yeah, I really wanted that water birth, but no, not feeling it right now. Like there's, we're going to keep going. And all of that's great, right? We're rarely going to get the exact picture, but the more we can picture it and picture the positive outcome, or the kind, and the more the experience and feeling that we want, then it necessarily has to be the externals, right? Like,
yeah, I think as you're talking, right, it's like having an experience happening to you versus you, co-creating that experience, and you feeling like how to do that.
So as you said, you had a doula that you really trusted, that you really felt like was with you. And and your husband. And sometimes, I mean, I've supported people on births, and sometimes it's the husband who needs a lot of the support.
Yeah.
In various ways.
Yeah.
So
I
I know
also,
you might, oh yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to share, I remember while I was pregnant, I also listened to a podcast that you had done with 𝐒𝐡𝐥𝐢𝐠𝐡𝐭𝐬 on her birth and like her choosing it and her being like afraid of it at first. So I think that was like helpful too, just to hear somebody else's experience and how they were thinking about it.
We need to hear other stories, need to hear other, and the
Yeah.
good, the bad, and the ugly, with it all.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned something about the aliveness that courses through you, and you mentioned 𝐒𝐡𝐥𝐢𝐠𝐡𝐭𝐬, and that was what she ended up realizing. That's what she was actually afraid of, not the pain, but could she encompass this level of aliveness and the energy that going through this process was going to bring forth? And you mentioned having an awareness of that also.
Yeah, I mean, I think in those moments, right, you just feel what you feel, and it's almost like your logical or thinking mind almost like surrenders to just like that feeling in the moment, like what's happening,
Yeah, no, here. And you also mentioned, which is just like these like subtle ways that things that I do have, kind of a bug up my butt sometimes about our overly medicalized world, is that, after 35, you're a geriatric. I'm like, can't we come up with a better name? But for me, it's like, where are we instilling fear? I think so often, unfortunately, the criticism I have sometimes of the hospital model is it's very fear-based, sometimes for good reason. We have to look at like, what are the potential threats? What could go wrong here? But that's not the whole experience. Right.
Yeah.
And just by saying that it's geriatric, I don't know, for me, it comes like, oh my God, my time is up. I'm all dried up. I don't know, these things but you were able to overcome that and have your daughter a little bit later. But what's it like for you? Having children in your 40s, child?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my husband and I talk about this a lot because we're like, oh, how old will we be when like she's done with high school? But in a lot of ways, so I 2020 was a big year. It was, when the pandemic had started and when things really slowed down. And just to share a bit about like my background, I was very career oriented. I think you knew that. I was always traveling for work. I was always trying to get promotions and things like that. And I, as much as possible, tried to also hold my personal life, my personal goals. It is difficult to do that when you're traveling a lot, but being grounded, I think it helped me to choose to do things. I had gotten a dog, and I had always wanted a dog. And I actually did that pre-pandemic, really, because of my relationship with my husband. He didn't travel. So at the time, he's my boyfriend. So we had chosen to do that. But, that was great because once we got her in February, and then March, everything was just like airplanes down. And so during that time, it was a rough time, to be through the pandemic and spending a lot of time with my husband and, my boyfriend at the time. And we had that year decided to get married. We also moved from, Illinois to Florida. And then I found out about, my pregnancy about a month after we got married. So it was quite a lot of a lot of change at once. Yeah. But I think
pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what helped me, right? I was 39 at the time, I was 38, 39, I got married at 38, had the baby at 39. And like now as a parent, I think what is really empowering is that I have lived so much of life and I have people in my life like you and others that, there's other ways of doing things and there's no sort of right or wrong way of doing things. And I feel like a stronger sense of myself now being, in my 40s than if I was even in my 30s. And so, being a parent at this age, I think has really helped me to enjoy the parenting. I think I was always two ways about it. I think in my culture, and you probably know this from me sharing, it's like you have to sacrifice for your children. Like that's a big thing. I saw my grandma do it. I saw my mom do it, out of love and care. But really, I wanted something else. I wanted more balance. And I think I didn't really know how to do that because I didn't have really a strong sense of self until I did a lot of my own growth work and my own coaching to really understand what's important to me. And how did I want to what type of mother did I want to be? And even a wife, because there's so many things that happened all at once.
It did all happen all at once. But you had been preparing. So on the one hand, it looks like, oh my gosh, this all happened at once. But you had been getting a lot of coaching and were open to seeking coaching around your relationships, and around having a partner that really supported you, empowered you, and, was going to be with you on the journey that you were creating, which is incredible. Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of 𝐒𝐡𝐤𝐻, Mexico. 𝐒𝐡𝐤𝐻 meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat. Getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if the idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudeLyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat. And I want to just touch a little bit on, because I love what you said about this positive aspect of bringing a child into your life like a little bit later. You rocked the corporate world for a period of time, and I've always known you as someone like that sets goals and then beats them, right? Like this isn't something, even in your growth and development, with assignments that we would have, it's like, yep, okay, really good. And I think that shift for you around me and my identity as a corporate woman and getting my value, there. And now, not like you've let that go, because now you've started your own business, Aspire Coaching, and you're still, working in that and in that realm. I also know that you've done a lot of work around, honoring feminine values, and things were very, and I think for a reason that you uncovered, like, why you were so solely career vision or driven to a certain extent. But can you say, I think you got where I'm going. Yeah. If you want to just.
Well, I do think, right, like with my career, I felt very much so that I work hard, and I'm pretty logical. And I found at work, like if I put the work in, and there were some positives of like the roles that I had and the exposure that I had. When I started my career in New York, it was at headquarters, so a lot of people saw me, but I never really claimed for myself my own ambition. It was just kind of like, this is what you do. This is the hard work you get done. And a lot of ways it was just like very masculine. I didn't really connect with my feelings. I didn't know what that was like. So on one hand, at work, I would be sort of this like very focused, like, let's get these things done. And then in my personal life, I would be almost like a pushover, kind of like, I'm the youngest in my family. I have 3 older brothers, and like we have really big family. Our extended family is very big. And so kind of getting born into a system like that, you just kind of like figure it out, and, growing up with 3 older brothers, like I got teased for crying. I got made fun of for, liking certain things. And so I think in some ways, when I went to the work world, I kind of hit a lot of those things to get things done. But then in my personal life, I was just like softer and warmer, but also very compliant to the family structure and to the roles of my parents and to elders and things like that. And I didn't really, know how to mesh those together. So, in one way, I would be very powerful at work. In another way, I would be kind of like lost in my own, family life and not really sure who I was in those different realms. And I think the feminine part of it was probably, we talk about pain, right? I think it's the feeling of pain and understanding that yearning to connect, to belong, and to actually bring those together, the synergies of like the masculine and the feminine to really feel whole wherever I am, not just pieces of me in all these different places.
Yeah, thank you. Because I'm seeing something that maybe I hadn't quite before, which was, we're all hungry for affirmation, for validation, and unconsciously and consciously seeking it. So you were really aware that, oh, how I get validated in my work life is to, on time, like be logical, be a certain way, but it was very results driven, very outcome driven and linear, right? So some of those more masculine, and you'd get a lot of promotions and, the ways that you see the results of your labors in that way. And then in the family life, like you had taken on a role, what I, hearing you say is like your role as the youngest, in the family, and kind of a, as you said, pushover, but, really not feeling as the same kind of level of power, right, that you did in your work. I think there were ways, like through your culture and that things that you liked about the feminine dynamic and things that you didn't like. And what I'm seeing is this, I don't know, this journey, this path. It's like, okay, I've done this. Now I've gathered like how to do this. And okay, I'm aware of like the roles I play out in my family. And by the time you got to where you found this relationship and now we want to have a child, you've had a chance to integrate them some, and see, I don't want to just be this person over here and this doing this. And, I can bring some of that kind of power and energy into my extended family life. Right. And start holding and shifting some of the role dynamic in there, and which you did. So seeing that and then bringing that then into your relationship with your husband and, honoring the process and journey of that to, bring you then into motherhood, which I think was something you would, like you said, always wanted, but weren't sure was going to happen for you. Right?
Yeah. I think I was always kind of this worrisome, like, oh, once I have a child, I'll have to give up everything. I'll have to give up my whole life. I'll have to give up my needs. And, because that's the pattern I had seen. And, even though you see other people's examples of it, I do think that when you have a child, you regress some, right? There's like this, like you kind of like, oh, wait, I'm going. And I remember that very clearly, even with breastfeeding was a struggle the first couple of weeks. And that was just, a really hard time to notice, just feeling a lot of fear around that. And then I think there was also that performance, right? Like, oh, I should be able to do this. I should know how to do this. And then you feel bad when you can't.
Yes.
And it's so interesting because so many people tell you about it, but until you live it, you're like, yeah, this is what it is. And it sucks. Like it feels really painful. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's so perfect. Yeah. And just that experience. Can you say a little bit more about like what you learned from that? How like even just the struggle with breastfeeding, right? When that came up,
Yeah. I mean,
how did you work
yeah.
that given, what you had learned?
Yeah, it's really interesting because here I am, like, just after birth, but really happy about that piece of it. And the baby was fine, and she was like gaining weight. And then when we left, it's kind of natural. They start losing weight. They don't latch properly. And so I had my doula come help me. And, I think a lot of, right, like the lactation consultants doula, they're like, this is how it should be done. Like no bottle, like it's, they kind of try to tell you like the best thing, kind of like the doctors, right, in the
Right.
hospitals. It's kind of very regimented. And it's like, do I use that data in service of myself to support myself, or do I use that against myself? And I found myself using it against myself and wanting to be really strict. And then I've done it, my mother was around, which was great, but I just noticed myself resisting the way she wanted to do things, or just be like, let's do it this way. And so, I just noticed it was really tough because I was, one, being super hard on myself. And two, like, resisting like the support my mom and my husband were trying to give me at that time, to just be like, let's just like, try it out and let's just be a little easier on it. And I think it wasn't until we went to the pediatrician where she was like, yeah, like she could have some formula, like that's not a big deal. It was almost like I needed permission in that point, but I felt kind of like lost and alone in like some of the data and not really sure how I wanted to deal with things. But then also this underlying pain and upset of just not being able, like not knowing.
Yeah. No, and that goes back to, the years you like in a corporate environment, like the win is to know,
Yeah.
right? And the win is like
Yes.
you have a logical and, you're rewarded when you do it right. Right.
Yeah.
So this
This
motherhood and
unknown.
mothering experience has so much unknown, so much you don't have control of, but somehow we're wired in our culture that you're still supposed to know. Somehow you're supposed to know.
Yeah.
Somehow you're supposed to do it right. And, someone's going to tell me what that right is. And it's just a whole different animal. It's a whole
Yeah.
different landscape that we have to. So I love that you went on that journey. And then, yeah, I needed some permission. I needed,
Yeah.
to hear like what these options were and then make that choice,
Yeah.
for myself. And I think that's this tuning into ourselves and, known you a long time, like as we've said, but I know part of that was allowing yourself to have your emotions about it,
Yeah.
allowing yourself to feel the sadness or hurt and fear that it wasn't going how textbook or
Yeah.
what it supposedly is supposed to. And that probably is very rare for a lot of women where it goes exactly like that.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because, like, logically, right, I'm like, oh no, people go through this. This is not a big deal. But when you're feeling the emotions and maybe overwhelmed by them, your brain isn't even the highest functioning. So even though you're like, I know this happens, it's actually happening to me. I mean, that's a little extra awareness, but it doesn't just solve it, right? Like, oh, this is happening. But it doesn't, like, the feelings are still there, and just to be able to be with the emotions and trust that, things will, like, I can make choices at every moment. Is helpful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Any other before I have some other questions for you, but we're on, the breastfeeding was a struggle with it, which was a great example. Anything else in your new motherhood that, you've used the tools that you have, and, the tools of rewriting the mother code are ones that,
Yeah.
you're aware of around this exploration and everything we've been talking about, but any other examples that you'd like to share? Because this is what, just like you were so empowered by Sangeeta, this is what empowers. And I want women to have examples of women like you who are making these very discerned and intuitive choices. Like those go together.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were probably two things that come to mind. One was just choosing to start my own company and go into coaching. And, a lot of people could argue, and I think there was probably some of this with my family, probably with friends too, of like, why would you leave, your corporate career? And you could be making such a big impact and such a big difference. And I struggled with that because I think duty is such a big thing for me. And I want to hold that duty. And, so like, I want to be that woman in the room. I want to be able to create some of those spaces. But at the same time, this is going back to me versus like what I think I have to do for other people, of like, what is going to be the most important to me, and
Right.
for me with this mothering journey, like, I don't want to be doing board reports at like, 12 o'clock at night. I want to feel like I'm being present to my daughter. I want to feel like I have agency over my time, and it's not to say, and here's the thing, right? I don't judge anyone for what they do. It's just
Sure.
as long as they feel like they're doing it for themselves and it's like 100% their decision. Because I think, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And for me, it was just like, even though I'm good at something, I don't need to just do it because I'm good at it, right? I
Right.
can choose
Oh,
to
that's a
enjoy
big
my
one.
life. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I think there's that duty, right? Like, if I can help somebody, I will, but it's like, no, like, will you? Like, because what is that taking away from yourself? Or what are you not doing for yourself? And I think as women, we're often like trained or told to take care of everyone else, take
Hmm.
care of the family, take care of the organization, whatever it is. And a big piece of my own mothering has been to take care of me and to choose what I think is going to be the best outcome for myself, not, somebody else, or not the money, or not the material things.
But yeah, and that's so selfish.
I know.
Oh,
Well, that's
how
the
dare
other
you
thing,
go
right?
for what's going to nourish you and make you happy?
Make me
Because
happy, right? And like the judgmental, well, even, I'm of course part of the moms group that you lead, right?
yeah,
And just like getting a babysitter for a couple of hours on the weekends, when my husband's working the weekends, it's just like even that struggle of like, should I do this? Is this the right
hmm,
thing? Do I feel guilty about that? Versus like, what's the best thing for me? How am I going to take care of myself so that I can be present and actually have quality time with my child versus not, and being annoyed by it and feeling helpless about my situation, or however I might be feeling.
no, I love that. Thank you. I think that was another really big one, and one that women get caught in so often is this choice, motherhood or career, or how am I going to do career motherhood? But you were someone who knew you'd want to work in some way, but
Yeah.
like, let's really look at like, and I love that you pictured yourself. Do I want to be up at midnight doing board reports? If I look at like just going back there, and sometimes what the discerning is like, where do I want to get validation? Right. And
Yeah.
I hope this doesn't sound at all like I'm dismissing women want to go back to their career, because I don't. But
Yeah.
again, it's just being aware, is some of this just because that's somewhere where I know how I'm going to get the validation, and I
Yeah.
know how to do it. Right. And we do.
Yeah.
And we might just need that. And we might need some of that in order to be the mom in our life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, and I still, right, like even with my career, I joke sometimes with my husband. I'm like, I think some people think I don't work full time because I'm at home. Like they think like, they think that I'm like, oh, like it's like a hobby job. And I'm like, no, like I have a real business. I have real clients. And so even, having those types of conversations, because I think, and sometimes in people's heads, they're like, oh, like, this thing on the side, but that's not who I am, right? I get to choose who I am.
Yeah. And those judgments, right? Like, and that's the bind, I think, that women get in, is there's the judging of each other, out of our
Yes.
own insecurity.
Yeah.
And we've talked about and, worked on this, like, how do we open space for women and all their choices and be
Mhm.
supportive? And I imagine that's a lot of what you coach, your executive moms around, is
Mhm.
being okay with their choices. But, and then one of my big things around rewriting the mother code is that we can start feeling that the only person that we need to worry about our judgment of is our own,
Be
and not
ourselves.
not critically, right?
Yeah.
And then once we're taking care of like what's going on in here, and I'm taking care of myself, there is more space to hold space for women and their choices,
Yeah.
and how, what, and be curious, and what does that mean to them? And that might even be like choosing everything from choosing not to have children, and then
Mhm.
how they go about it, and then how they live their motherhood journey or their mothering journey, that, we're all big enough. If we can expand and build a baby inside, our body can expand. I think we can expand our thinking in that arena. And I think that's something that you're doing in the work that you're doing with women.
Yeah. I think that expansive space where only, how you like, I don't even know, I guess there's a part of it, it's like, right, how you judge yourself, but actually what brings you satisfaction and fulfillment.
Yes.
One of the things that I find, I mean, it's interesting because I can relate a lot to the beginning of my coaching journey, is that, when sometimes I ask women what satisfaction and fulfillment feel like, it's like they don't even know, like the beginning. Like what could that be? So
Or
a
it's
lot
going to
of
be
it is,
about taking care of others. Like
yes,
that's the only
like
lens we really
that's
know
like
how.
a purpose, right? It's a
Yeah.
strong purpose of like, oh, it'll be for my kids or for my mom, or but then I'm like, no, but like beyond that, beyond those roles, what is there? And even sitting in that question and that unknown of it, is really powerful, because I don't think we a lot of times stop to think like, what is satisfaction to me outside of the roles that I play in my life?
Well, I think you've done such an inspiring, beautiful job in my terms, rewriting the mother code, and having the journey that's yours and that's your own. And that doesn't mean it's struggle free. It just means you have a lot more tools available to you to learn and grow from those struggles, right? So that I also know you've had a lot of beautiful moments, in your family, with your husband, with your daughter, because you've done the work to be more present, in those moments and with yourself. Otherwise they just like fly by in the chaos of it all. Right. We don't
Yeah,
even,
you just miss it
we
all,
miss them.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
miss some of those. So I want to hear, well, actually, since we just brought that up, do any come to mind for you? Like, oh, wow. Like well, you said it in your birth, right? So that was one
Yeah,
of them where you were just really clear and aware, like, wow, this is a moment, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
that sticks with me, right? And that's going to stick with me. The pain is divine, while I'm in the midst of it. I just
Yeah.
love
Yeah, I
that.
think I need to think about that more when I'm like with my daughter. She's starting to have
Yeah.
tantrums, because I think even in that I feel so I don't know, I get like kind of sent back, like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? Versus like, let me just have her feelings, and once she has them, we can move on. But in the moment I'm like, oh my gosh, like this
Get this
little
over
being is
with.
so
Shut her up.
powerful. So I don't know, maybe even mothering myself in those moments while I'm with her and not trying to
Mhm.
control the behavior, just to be with that, because she has
Yeah.
such a strong will, which I'm like, oh, I'm a good mom. She has a lot
Mhm.
of big feelings. She feels really entitled in the world. And I don't remember my terrible twos or anything like that. So it's like, I'm glad that she's having these, but I also have a visceral feeling when she's really upset and she's having these moments. So I think that those are even more like aliveness pieces that I probably don't think of as positives, but maybe I can reframe that for myself.
Sure.
But other moments, my husband was saying one of his favorite times of the day is to put our daughter Isabel down. And he oftentimes, like, I'm in the room too, but I try not to be too close because she'll like grab onto me. And it's like very sweet when I hear him talking to her and he's like telling her about like things she won't remember, but things he will remember. It's very endearing. And I find those like very sweet moments to just be
Oh,
listening on.
I love that. Well, I love that, Yann. And, that's honestly, seems like easy to have a moment like that, but it's not. Like, I know, what it takes to, in that moment, everything from like, I might have judgments about how he's doing it. Like, I'm just thinking about the things, right? And stepping back so he can have that space with her because, he enjoys it so much versus, sometimes like, oh, I want to get validated by her and have her cling to me. And honestly, this is something my husband and I worked through a lot in our relationship is competition, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that's real. And I don't think we talk about that enough, that
Yeah.
we can be competitive with our spouse for the better
Attention.
parent award or the attention, and whatnot. And it's not good or bad. It's just, again, it's the awareness and how do we want to notice that, bring it to light and then look at what is that for us, so for you to be able to step
Yeah.
back, because then in that moment, once you've gone through all those in your being, you can take in that moment and really treasure it, and,
Yeah.
and,
Savor
and
it. Yeah.
observe and savor. Yeah. All right. I have
Yeah.
one last question for you, but first, before I do my final question, I'd love for people to know how to get a hold of you and how
Yeah.
can women find you? I mean, anybody, but particularly, your demographic of corporate women who are
Mhm.
mothers.
Sure.
Where do they find you?
So they can find me at a couple of places. You can find me on LinkedIn, just my name, YANNDANG. I post mostly weekly. And you can also find me on Instagram at aspirecoaching_Yann, YANN. I've got a few videos on there, so people can enjoy those.
I hope they go, and I'm sure there are definitely listeners who are going to want to know more about you and what you do. Well, thank you. So my last question is, what does Rewrite the Mother Code mean to you?
Rewriting the mother code for me means releasing and letting go of disempowering beliefs and behaviors and having greater awareness of them, because I don't think it's so easy to just like let them go, right? Like as if mom guilt is just going to go, but to not allow it to have so much agency or power over you. So I've just been working on allowing the guilt but not acting on it, like it's there.
Totally.
But I don't need to make it, like I don't need to magnify it. I don't need to give it more power than it already has. Because I think, the mother code is really about empowering ourselves, whether we have kids or not, however we live our lives. But it's about having a mother code for ourselves that's about empowering ourselves.
No, that's beautiful. I love that. I love how everybody gets it, but it's always a little bit different and from your lens, and what matters to you about it. So thanks so much for being here and sharing and being vulnerable, sharing your journey with us.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Gertrude.
Wow. I don't know about you, but I'm so moved and touched by so much about what Yann was sharing. And I always feel like it's kind of my job, because sometimes, and if you've been in your own growth journey or that, we can sometimes minimize some of the big moves that we make and forget like everything that it took to get there. Yann was and still is, very dedicated to her growth journey and really dove in deeply, exploring her family codes, exploring the cultural codes. And we heard some of it. I just want to really underline, and that's what I love doing, is working with, women on that journey who are really up for digging in and, doing that level of work. And she also mentioned the moms group that I lead. And I do have a newer moms, I call it, group that I lead. And we explore and talk about, the deeper issues. It isn't like and there's practical things that we touch on, but more my job in that group is to keep bringing it back to the mom, so yes, I'm having this choice or upset I'm having in, mothering my child. Okay, what does that mean to me? What's going on in my internal landscape that we can mine, in this arena? I love that work. And if you're interested in something like that, I'm happy to talk to you. I just wanted to say one more thing about this episode, and that is really going to stick with me, like I said. But to be able, in the midst of, this beautifully painful experience of childbirth, and to honor and hold and have a mantra of my pain is divine, is, that's kind of like the Olympics of like when you've done a lot of growth work and you can hold that level of presence with your pain. So I just really want to honor Yann and remember that for myself. So, what are some of the pain points that you may have, in your mothering journey? And what's another way that you can look at those or reframe the pain or, look at it from a different perspective? So thanks so much for being with me today. Enjoy, have a blessed day or evening whenever you're listening to this. And till next time. Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to Rewrite the Mother Code. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women, well, actually everybody, men included, to find it. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons. or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I'll see you next time.